Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Israel Brief. I'm Rolene Marks. We're brought to you by Lay of the Land. And can you believe it? We're headed to the weekend. But before we do, let's take a look at those top stories. 2 Palestinian Authority security officers were killed in a gun battle with IDF officers operating in the northern West Bank last night. A third member of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad was also killed in the gun battle. Now, this story is very interesting because what actually happened was that members of the elite Yamam unit were conducting an arrest for suspected terrorists in this northern part of the West Bank and were undercover. In other words, they weren't wearing uniforms. And the 2 Palestinian Authority officers saw them. They obviously looked some way suspicious and they opened fire. And the IDF officers opened fire back. And the 2 Palestinian Authority intelligence officers were killed in the exchange. And the third member was a member of Palestinian Islamic Jihad. In other news, Sky News Middle East reporter Mark Stone has had to apologize for a tweet that he put out on social media yesterday, saying that the anti-Semitism around the world is largely responsible because of the Israeli government. So as you can imagine, this resulted in a lot of outrage by Jewish organizations and individuals around the world who said, how can you blame the Israeli government for the state of some of the abhorrent anti-Semitic abuse we are seeing around the world? Well, he has had to apologize, and he issued his apology saying that he in no way aimed to blame the Israeli government. He said he had spoken to some people in Israel and this is what they were saying. And he was reminded that he probably spoke to a very, very fringe group in Israel. He seems to not have spoken to the majority of us who are appalled by what we see and actually draw a line between some of the ways the news is reported, especially in recent weeks by news networks like Sky News, and the rise in anti-Semitism. So he has had to remove his tweet and apologize. But this begs a very, very important question. You know, it's very easy for journalists like Mark Stone to look for other reasons that anti-Semitism is rising. But over the last couple of weeks, we have seen the role that media plays, especially how they cover the Middle East. We spoke last week about the New York Times and an expose they put out called "They Were Only Children," and it's been subsequently found that several of the children featured there that were allegedly killed during the recent conflagration actually belonged to either the armed wing of Hamas or the Mujahideen. And, unfortunately, the damage is done. Here we've also had incidents with Sky News where we've had to take them to task several times for misrepresenting the fact. And in this case, anti-Semitism, which is resulting in a record amount of incidents around the world, cannot be blamed on the government of Israel, which is the government of a democratic state and the nation state of the Jewish people, but rather on other issues. And this is really, really having an effect because people are taking what the news is saying as the de facto truth. And unfortunately, in these last few weeks, context and facts are missing, and that is a massive, massive problem. And while we are speaking about the news, a very interesting development. Hamas have awarded Al Jazeera a prize for the way that they covered the recent conflagration between Hamas and Israel in the Gaza Strip. Now, this has raised a few interesting questions. First of all, there was the controversy about the media building in Gaza being raised by the IDF for housing, apart from Al Jazeera and Associated Press, also members of Hamas. In fact, a unit that was dedicated to overwhelming the Iron Dome systems, which were actually maintaining the safety of not just Israelis, but also Palestinians. And it begs the question, if you are awarding Al Jazeera this kind of prize for its coverage, surely you would have been cognizant of the fact that they were in your building. And some of the stories covered by Al Jazeera are extremely slanted. And we've just discussed the damage that they are having. And now that they've received an award from Hamas, it's literally getting the Hamas stamp of approval. So the next time you watch Al Jazeera, just remember that this is a news organization that has the backing of Hamas. And our last story is one that makes all of us animal lovers very happy. And Israel has become the first country in the world to outright ban the sale of fur to the fashion industry. So this will make practices by fashion houses a lot more environmental and animal friendly. This was signed into law by Environmental Minister Gila Gamliel yesterday and has been welcomed by NGO Animals Now, and has the backing of at least 86% of the Israeli public. So those are your top stories before we head into the weekend, a very important weekend for Israel, because we are expecting our new coalition government to be signed in or sworn in on Sunday. In the meantime, if you need some really good content to entertain and occupy you this weekend, look no further than our website at www.layoftheland.online, our Facebook page where you may be viewing this very video, at Lottel site. While you're here, please share our content, like us, follow us, invite your friends to the party. We're also on YouTube at the Israel Brief. Hit that red subscribe button, and on Twitter where you can interact with us and follow us at Lay of the Land 5. That's Lay of the Land with the digit 5. So from the team at Lay of the Land and the Israel Brief, I'm Rolene Marks, wishing you a safe, a healthy weekend. Shabbat Shalom wherever you are in the world, and we'll catch you on Monday.